when we were also preparing, I asked a very big question of you. I said, what do you wish leadership and owners understood about digital when you're at the table? Because one thing I'm going to tell you, you guys, about him is he was the first digital director that took a digital broadcasting company and generated over 1 million subscribers on YouTube. But not only did he do that in Hot 97, but he went again and he did it at Power 106. Although we are radio, he won over on YouTube. That's passive revenue. So while he's creating that content, that's another line item that's helping you to scale your digital department as well as to meet your bottom line.
We saw our YouTube channel that year. I mean, we were putting on, I want to say at least 200, 500,000 new subscribers. Views were out of the roof. At that time, that was one of the biggest YouTube channels out there. I've always been a believer that if you follow your competition, who's the radio guy or lady across the street, you become radio, right? So I think it's important to become the genre. If I'm a hip hop fanatic, fan, I want to do hip hop things. Let's do really cool radio stuff, but then let's do really cool things inside of the hip hop space that would resonate with the audience.
Welcome to As a Result. I'm your host, Ashley Smith, founder and CEO of Emmis Media. We're bringing you conversations with media leaders covering the latest news and trends in broadcast radio, television, streaming, podcasting, and digital publishing. Today, I am joined by Jeffrey Thacker, Vice President of Digital Content for Kapenerkick Endeavors, and we're discussing strategies to scale your digital department. Prior to his current role, Jeffrey was Vice President of Digital Content at Meruelo Media. You may know them for Power 106 in Los Angeles. He was also Vice President of Digital Content at Emmis Digital, which included leadership of all Emmis clusters. I met Jeffrey when he was the Digital Director at Emmis New York, and I was the Digital Sales Strategist. Our teams monetize the digital platforms for Hot 97 and WBLS 107.5. He's known as a digital Jedi, and he has the results to prove it. Jeffrey's content strategies help generate millions of dollars in digital revenue, and he also created the content strategy that led the Hot 97 YouTube channel to become the first American radio station to reach 1 million subscribers. Today's episode was recorded live during a media conference. Let's join the conversation.
Wonderful. So you were responsible for monetizing all of their digital platforms, correct?
That's correct.
And what are those digital platforms?
Digital platforms range from website, social media, to video. You can look into our apps and streaming as well. Okay.
So for any of the broadcasters that are in this room, I know that a lot of people will say that we do digital, we do content. But what I can tell you is from after being in New York and actually seeing what a digital sales department can do, what that missing piece that a lot of broadcasters don't have is what you call digital publishing. We're trying to sell before we actually have a product. So Jeffrey, what I would like for you to do right now is I want you to talk about what is digital publishing, what is that digital content? And for our broadcasters, when they say, well, we might not have the capacity to do that, I want you to talk about how you were able to scale your organization, because we've had previous conversations and I know that you started with minimal staff. And by the time that I left, we had almost 30 members as far as your digital content team. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so more or less a digital production. Oh, sorry. Hello, everybody. Sorry, start there. So digital production, more or less, we treated the department more like a news department, essentially. It is a direct extension off of what we do in the programming space. So oftentimes we were working really close with our programming department to match the needs of what was coming off of air to move that into more of a digital space. So that was tied to more of the immediacy need to get whatever breaking new songs out, our interviews, you name it, across the board. And in between that also, there is like everything that you do within a programming space, there is gray space, right? And the gray space are, on air, you have but so much time to talk to an artist. And what we did in the digital space was identify more or less the gray space. The gray space is what are the fun things that we're not talking about inside of the interview? Like, can we create original, unique content that not only transcends just what the artist is talking about for that day, but can we show the fun aspects of the artist, the gray space, what I like to call it. So we started creating outside of just the day-to-day content pieces coming from the interview and everything else. We started creating original content. And that original content became a little more impactful, just as impactful as the on-air content. So as a team, we would work to identify a few things. We would socially push out our on-air interviews, and that would be like the first week push of socially, moving the needle as far as like 30-second bite-sized pieces to, promote the interview that just happened. And then the following week, we will still talk about it in tweets and everything else, but then we'll introduce what I call the gray space. We'll introduce an original content piece tied to an artist that did not come from the interview. Might be a little more fun, right? For years, we were doing a thing called 97 Seconds, just kind of talking about the upbringing of an artist or fun moments about them and fun tidbits. Those content pieces did extremely well. So that space became more of a news production cycle of getting the programming elements and the digital elements out there as well.
Wonderful. And so what I want to do is, because I jumped ahead, for anyone in the room that is a broadcaster, I want you to think to yourself, do you have a digital director? And I also want you to think, I'm going to have him kind of go through his background. And I want him to really explain what is the role of a digital director, what are their responsibilities, and then also to know what are those skill sets that you should be looking for if you're going to look for a digital director. Yeah.
A little more fun when I first started off. I was a interactive brand manager when I first started at Emmis. I don't know what that title really means. It was an old title where it's just like you just do everything and control the digital brand. But with that, it came with a slew, which I call myself the Swiss Army knife. But doing graphic design, someone who understands standardized branding, someone who understands web, and could not only understand it, but they can't implement it and do it as well. Someone who understands content as well, well-written person who could read and digest it and be able to spit it back out. And also moving into more today, understanding into video and what is video, like, how to shoot properly, how to convert that over properly for social media and for long form video formats. Those elements make a really good digital director. Actually, you touched on something just on like scale. And there's probably people in the room that's like, I can't get to that point. I don't have the budget. Do I have to build a brand new department? And the answer is you can't do it overnight, right? Sometimes it starts with just one person and creating a strategy from 1 year, 2 year, 3 year plan. And depending on the scale of your company, identify how fast you can move the needle with that. At Emmis, at that time when I started, it was 3 of us, and each person managed their own brand. But at that time, and this is, I'm sure you're going to ask this question later on, Ashley, but at that time, digital fell under a marketing umbrella. So marketing allocated the budget for those resources. So everyone, like myself at that time period, reported to marketing. And as time went on, and more of a need of, different elements in digital became a little more important, such as video became a little more important, or social media became more important. We started to see departments allocate funding to support that initiative, right? So I remember seeing marketing once again say, you know what, there are a lot of artists coming in, you guys would do really well with a video person, so let me move my street team budget over to this initiative so that we could bring somebody in to do video. And then years later on, a year or two later, it was, let me move another person in for social media. So over time, we started to see a department start to grow and flourish based on an organization's needs at that time. And every year is different and every demand is different. I even remember the year when sales needed more support, creating ad banners and so forth. So they dedicated, again, another resource to that department. So I don't want to get too far ahead of you, Ashley, but that's kind of more of the scale of a department that you could look at.
Okay. So what I want to touch on now is what the elephant in the room is. It always is when we talk to broadcasters, is we talk about the investment and we talk about measuring ROI. And when we were preparing for this conversation, you said something that was so critical. If you were to look at a spreadsheet, most times you might not see a profit coming from digital. However, you said if you do not have a digital presence, you're leaving marketing for your own brand off the table. So I want you to go more in depth in your digital marketing, your digital content, and what it does for your brand as far as earned media.
Yeah, I mean, you are definitely leaving marketing off the table. It's easy to look at it as a ROI expense. God knows I've been in so many of those conversations. But without digital, no one knows who you are. There's always a conversation about, reaching a younger demo or, fishing with a fisher. But if you're not doing digital, how are you doing that, right? Just basic data tells me, and I've looked at it for years, the streaming numbers. I've seen streaming numbers for so many different stations. If I go back and look 5-10 years, there's a constant decline as far as people engaging with live audio streaming. Like, we know that. I think a lot of PDs know that as well. So if you're not doing digital and going to people as they are scrolling through social media, you're doing something wrong. You definitely have to be there. And it's not so much of just the everyday tune in, do this, but as much effort as I've seen PDs put into having an amazing spot or to drive someone to tune in, that effort should be the same way to drive people on a digital side. Programming has to look at digital as a full-blown extension of that department in tandem with marketing as well. So
wonderful. So when we were also preparing, I asked a very big question of you. I said, what do you wish leadership and owners understood about digital when you're at the table? Because one thing I'm going to tell you, you guys, about him is he was the first digital director that took a digital broadcasting company and generated over 1 million subscribers on YouTube. What you need to know from that is that's passive revenue. So while he's creating that content, that's another line item that's helping you to scale your digital department as well as to meet your bottom line. But not only did he do that in Hot 97, but he went again and he did it at Power 106. So I want you to talk a little bit about, although we are radio, he won over on YouTube. So talk about that extension and what that means for the overall brand, because no longer were people just looking at Hot 97 just for radio. They said, I want to see those behind the scenes videos. Tell us about that.
So I've always been a believer that if you follow your competition, who's the radio guy or lady across the street, you become radio, right? So I think it's important to become the genre. Like, if I'm a hip hop fanatic, fan, I want to do hip hop things. And I'm looking at all the top blogs and websites that are resonating with my core demographics. So the thought was, let's do really cool radio stuff, but then let's do really cool things inside of the hip hop space that would resonate with the audience. So we did that, and we built that content piece to be a continuous news cycle that matched and didn't take anything away from programming. But what it did was it gave more to programming, where even we had fillers, we had stop sets inside of commercials where it was like, log on to website name, to learn more about X, Y, and Z, or subscribe to, station's name YouTube channel for more because we have this, and that, right? And the more we did as a team, right? Because it's never just me. I've come to realize you can't be the smartest person at the table. That's absolutely impossible. You can't think to have all the ideas. I hired smart people who are who love the brand, who love the genre of music, and we would do weekly meetings as a digital department, and we were a department, not a subset off of like a marketing or a program. It was the actual digital department, and we would brainstorm ideas. We would create an editorial calendar at the top of the year of just things that we could be doing in anniversaries, birthdays, but not just like a happy birthday. It's it's your favorite rapper's birthday. Right below. It'll be a little bit more than that. It'll be a little more substantial. We did something around the anniversary of Ready to Die for Biggie, but what we did was a little bit different. We saw that on a calendar, we put it down, and we brainstormed that idea, and we met with quintessential people in Biggie's circle who either DJ'd for him, wrote about him in an editorial manner, or anything. And we created a piece around that did really well. And we did that across the board as a team for years, and it always did well. And we saw our YouTube channel that year. I mean, we were putting on, I want to say at least 200, 500,000 new subscribers. Views were out of the roof at that time. Not so much so now, but that was one of the biggest YouTube channels out there. And then when I came over to Power 106, that was fun also. When I came in, Power had 381,000 subscribers. Now, when you think about this, both Hot and Power had these channels for 8 to 10 years of just time, just elapsing. And same thing, when they hired me at Power, it was like, hey, can you get me 1 million subscribers? I'm like, yeah, just give me the resources, and I will do the same thing, and we'll bring some revenue in. And a year later, we hit 1 million. So it's happy about that.
I love how you hit on the aspect of team. That's when I knew that I was going to take that position. When I took the visit, I walked in the room. There was a huge boardroom, probably about 30 of us, and we were just bouncing ideas. And you always call us creatives. That's what I love about it. It's not just hiring someone for the position. It's someone who's passionate about it and someone who's creative. But most people, if you're in the room and you're just starting out your digital department, you don't even know what type of talent you should be looking for, what those roles and positions are. So take us through the type of roles and positions that were on our team.
Wow. Yeah. First and foremost, I always thought having a project manager was quintessential, right? Because it's nothing worse than knowing you're going to build scale and you're going to have bodies in that room and projects, but no one to delineate those projects. So project management was key for me. I had videographers on the team, ranging from full-time to part-time videographers. My part-time videographers at that time, everybody was based on a certain time of day, just so that I had content that was being edited that could be passed throughout in linear fashion as far as edits, because as you guys know, radio doesn't sleep, neither should content as well, right? You just can't hit an off button for digital, so you got to keep figuring that out. I had bloggers on staff, along with graphic designers who also did web work as well. And of course, later on, we brought in a video producer, which was really important because at the level of videos that we were creating, it was important to have someone, because it was impossible for me to be in every single video shoot at the time, to have a video producer in the room to help facilitate the needs and requests coming in from the departments.
Okay, so now what I want to do is, because we're really talking about owned and operated. So if you're smaller and you're a local broadcaster and you don't have that digital team, more than likely you're doing what is programmatic, and programmatic can be your targeted ads, just banner ads, or programmatic can be you are getting news stories from a different source. But it doesn't mean that they're local. So I want you to think about when you're at home and you get a news story. If it's not local to your community, you might not be more inclined to engage with it. So let's talk about the importance of having that staff actually on site that can talk about the content in the news that's going on localized to your community, because you're doing that on air. So you should have that same mindset when you're talking about creating content for your viewers online. And for anyone who wants to really understand what a digital director is, you have a program director that is determining what is the content that's going on over the airwaves. Your digital director is doing the same thing. They're just doing it online. So tell us a little about why it is so important to have local content online.
Yeah. There's a lot of widgets and programs that do backfill for different websites now, and that's fine. I'm not taking anything away from that. It keeps your website current if you don't have anyone. But having a local content, it actually plays to your best strength, because when you look at more of an SEO and how people search, your content is going to stand out higher than regurgitated content over and over again, right? That content, it will be a little more, not so much evergreen, but it will mean something more to your consumers who are, coming to your website new or by way of Google searching. And it also gives a little more validity when your on-air personalities are talking about it on air. So part of that, we used to have bloggers who would also interact with our on-air staff during those time slots, right? Because it was pretty important. So if there was like a breaking news piece that just happened during somebody's time slot, those bloggers would actually go into the studio at the top of the hour, or if there's an emergency, they'll give the full outlook or headlines of everything that's currently happening within the digital space. And at that time already, they would have already written the blog piece. So those things are important because it gives the on-air conversation about what's happening currently at the moment, and that on-air personality is able to immediately say, log onto our website for more information, without going over her talk break or anything along those lines.
Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to take us into media consumption. And we're going to just talk about cross-platform. So we know traditionally you're over the airwaves. We're talking about streaming audio if you have a streaming player. We're talking about apps if you have that. You have your editorial, you have your social media. And we created and we generated a ton of revenue from social media. But what I want everyone to know in this room right now is social media is just not a sales post. So if you go out and you have an NTR event and you just take a picture of that, there is not a true content strategy behind that. And what a lot of broadcasters are not going to like when I say this right now is Jeffrey Thacker kept us from doing that. There were certain platforms where we actually could not have sales posts. And this was not actually a directional sell. It was just content strategy. So I want to talk about the marriage between sales as well as the marriage between digital publishing, because what a lot of people don't know is if you're doing a lot of these sales posts, you're lowering your engagement. And when you come to algorithms, if that engagement is lessened, then that means your visibility is lessened. So tell the people right now what your rules were as far as how sales could be placed in social media. And then we can talk about our website. On our website, there were no social posts, no sales posts that were allowed in the header, in the rotator. Only news was there because we are focused as a news organization, and sales came in as a great companion.
Yeah, I feel like a villain in this hot seat because, boy, that was some major fights. Well, here's the thing. No one likes looking for, I think it's just good form also, but I'll talk more about the strategy behind it. But like just on a basic user level, if you are, a fan of sports or, whatever it is, and you're looking at the stats of your favorite football player, and boom, like you can't look at that stat no more. You are now looking at, a law firm ad or, a pair of socks ad. That kind of takes the experience away. So it became more experiential as well. Then we later learned that, a lot of the major brands such as like YouTube and Instagram, it's actually in their terms and conditions that you just can't run your own ads inside of the space, right? Then we started seeing the backlash was our sales teams were selling our big numbers. Like, we have, hundreds of thousands of followers on Instagram, but then they would forcibly do this one sales post that, I was like, fine, we'll see. And it would have 2 likes and 4 comments, and we would have lost 100 followers, right? If we do it again, it'll become like another teeth cleaning ad on Instagram, and the post goes up, it's 2 likes, 0 comments, and we lost another 100 followers. So the question is, like, your recap is going to look really bad because you're screaming how amazing this brand is to the consumers, but there's no engagement, so the recap is bad, and your digital team just lost 200 followers because that's not what people are looking for your brand. So I wrote out an outline of things that the sales team could sell, and for me, it became more of a inclusion, right? Not so much. I didn't want the sales team to come up with brand new ideas, and you would hear that a lot. Like, come up with these ideas and sell it to your client, and we'll just run it as a digital thing. That's not how digital works. Let's sell the things that do really well on the website. So if we know our morning show interviews do really well, let's sell the morning show interviews that are on digital. So morning show name brought to you by sponsor name. Like you could have placement there. You could have placement in tags and copy. Like I wanted the sales team to be smart about not just forcibly adding ads everywhere, but figuring out unique ways to be tied to really, really good content that could go really big. One a good example is at Power. It's one of my last ones I did before I left radio. We were doing a freestyle. We had Migos coming in the studio. I told a sales person at the time, and she had Smirnoff, one of the new Smirnoff brands. So I gave her all the different elements that we could do within that space that'll make the client happy at that dollar amount, and which consisted of product placement in the room. It consisted of logo inclusion behind the host. Couldn't do it behind the artist because of their own relations and their own drinks and stuff. So that was my workaround. We also talked about lower thirds coming across the bottom, and that became a package. And that video became something like that weekend. It hit 1 million views already. I believe that video is somewhere north of like 4 to 5 million views right now, with branded sales content that also benefited for weeks on end on a programmer side to talk about it and utilize the audio clips on air, and also served a really strong component on the sales side to also bring back renewals. So
wonderful. And so we're going to stick with sales right now, because what you do is much different than a lot of sales organizations. You understand that there is a disconnect between digital publishing and sales. So you do a ton of training where you help them to understand what the platforms are and then how to sell the value proposition to the advertiser to create a lasting partnership. So talk a little bit about the training mechanisms that you have in place.
Trainings for sales teams. We've done a lot of different levels of training. We've done, we've gone as basic as understanding every single nuance of the websites or social media and everything else along those lines. We even went to a point of moving the sales team to understand more of an isolated incidents of like understanding streaming and what are those terms. And we were running. It's been a while since I kind of deleted a lot of stuff in radio, but I think we were not doing total line on radio. So we were running our own commercials for audio streaming. So explaining how they could also get their commercials to run. What did those times mean as far as impressions? It's a whole different learning for our sales teams. I don't think there was a piece that we missed. And Ashley, at that time, you were pretty critical, you and Avery at the time, of I covered more of the top line of like, this is what you need to learn. But I believe your position and Avery's position was more of okay, this is what you learn and this is how you apply it on a day-to-day basis. Like constantly reinforcing the actual use case scenarios of what they just learned.
And so what I want to do for everyone in the room is I want to connect the dots. So as a digital director, he programs what content is online, what content is on social media. And if he is not creating that, he is working with the entire team where we come up with, as he mentioned, like an editorial calendar. What my role is as a digital sales strategist, and he's mentioning someone by the name of Avery, who is our digital sales manager. What we do is we work with the sales team to help, as he just said, translate what is actually going on social media and what those digital platforms are. And if depending on how large scale or when you're starting, there are a lot of digital products. So I have a list here. And if you've ever been on my webinar, you know that it is extensive. And so sometimes it can become overwhelming because you feel like you have to be in every space. But I can tell you one thing that I learned from Jeffrey, and it has always stuck with me, is that what is working? And what do you have the skill and the resources to do? So if your newsletter is performing well, let's stick with the newsletter until we're able to scale. It doesn't mean that you have to be everywhere doing everything. And some of those are your owned and operated impressions if you have the ability to do that. You've got your programmatic where you can buy third party, in which right now that's phasing out a little bit. So you're going to want to make sure that you're collecting your own data. We heard that from Mark Pritchard yesterday. We heard that during a session this morning. Social media, we talked about him doing well on YouTube and video. Your editorial, those are your blog posts. So an example of that is we talked about a lot of health this morning. Something that we did for Invite Health is just simply like a simple vitamin. How do you incorporate that into your day? And so rather than is a directional ad of buy this vitamin, is this, we had an influencer. Her name is Deja Vu. We had a content component called Healthy Her. We were able to talk about her waking up and incorporating whatever the fiber supplement that went into her veggie juice. We went out with her and we did some video throughout New York that showed her lifestyle of her incorporating that brand. He also mentioned OTT, streaming audio, studio sponsorships. Those studio sponsorships, he's talking about 1 million YouTube views. Every time that video is played, that product placement is in the studio. So that is generating more revenue. But I'm overwhelmed just telling you this right now. So what you want to do is you want to figure out what are your capabilities. How much staff do you have that can really take this on? And he mentioned it earlier when we started this is something that takes a while to develop. And so what I've seen with a lot of local broadcasters and just even small businesses, you might do a couple posts and you might get dejected because you're not seeing the engagement, that you're looking for. So Jeffrey, talk about the time span of you scaling this department, of what you've done in the past, but then also how much time it really takes to see the engagement to really monetize.
It takes time. Even more so now because there's so much content noise in the space. So when you create content now, it's tied to a few things. It's tied to consistency, loyalty. I think if you can be consistent with creating it, being true to the space, to the people that are taking in the content, and let it organically mature. Oftentimes we force people who may not be the best fit for a digital platform, right? And I think sometimes it's nice if you utilize other talents to be influential in the space. Not everyone is going to transcend digital. Some people have the gift of gab, which makes them amazing on-air people. But I've seen and utilized young talent, or just talent. I'm going to say young. I think talent has a range of young and old. But if you find that right talent who lights up a room when they log on a digital side, utilize that person, right? And you would actually probably move the needle a little bit faster. You might actually have a really talented person in your building or on your staff, that you just may not know, because that person may not have the title or the title or the time span working in the industry as long as you have, right? So that respect level may not be there. There's a lot of people in these buildings who are tremendously talented individuals who are often overlooked. But when you step back and you look at what they're doing on their own personal social side, or looking at what they're doing outside the building, you might discover something new within your own organization that you could utilize them for. I've been known to find talent on, someone who was a street teamer, right? Because they had a will and a passion, and they loved the genre of music, and I love everything about them and their approach, and I hired them, right? So I think we often have to look at our internal and kind of figure out, because the people internal are there because they love the product and they love the brand. And you might really have a golden gem, and you might have a gem in that building that you may not know of. So
wonderful. So we are actually going to be coming to an end, but the big question for any broadcaster that is in the room is the why. Why should I invest in digital? And I say it in my webinars all the time. We know what direction that we're headed in, is that if you do not invest in digital in the next couple of years, then you might be obsolete. So Jeffrey, I want you to close us out with the why. Why should a broadcaster invest in digital today?
You won't make it. You won't. It's impossible. We're so much on this right now. We're on our phones. We're streaming. We're doing everything. I've taught college for 10 years. I've seen what they come to class with. They're only streaming if there is an immediate major call to action, and I've seen those numbers. So if you want to be top of mind and relevant, you have to start thinking about the marketing aspect and apply it to digital. Like, you have to do marketing anyway. So look at your bottom line as far as marketing, how you market in 1 year, and start small. Shave off some of the top, get rid of, some of the, I can't speak to everyone. I don't know everyone's numbers offhand, but if you could shave off direct mail a little bit, and I know how much that costs, or if you could shave off a TV spot, or if you could shave off a billboard, anything along those lines, think about investing a person or two to help market your brand and your station.
Thanks for listening to As a Result. Find new episodes on the Dimensions Media YouTube channel and all your favorite podcast platforms. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and turn on notifications. For industry updates, sign up for the As a Result newsletter at dimensionsmedia.com. Thanks for listening.